Welcome, everybody. It's Rick and Russ again. We are here to give you a little insight into football. I'm Russ Landy, and Rick Strom is right there. We're going to give you just a little insight into what we think of football, what we've heard, what we know, and just our overall expertise. The first thing we got to talk about, Rex Ryan. Everybody thinks the axe is about to fall. Should it happen? Well, what do you think, Rick? Do you think Rex deserves to lose his job?
I said this yesterday, and I've said this before. I never openly lobby for someone to lose their job and go. And granted, it's so different from someone at a technology company losing their job, Rex freaking Ryan, okay? But I never openly lobby for someone to lose their job unless they've done something horribly wrong or have, for example, been bigoted or racial or anything like that. There are a few excuses that could be made that are fair. For Rex Ryan and the overall head coaching carousel that goes on, and even head coaches overall, I like to give them 3 years. So Rex being there for 2 right now, granted he's 1 game below 500. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'd say no, just because my rule has always been 3 years. Now, if you know that this is not your guy, and you know that the defenses, which has been Rex's calling card, have been bad in points per game, they have been 17th or worse in both seasons, which is totally unacceptable, especially when Mario Williams knows that he is best rushing the passer instead of dropping back in coverage like last season, where he didn't really regress. He was just part of a very, very bad system. I don't want to stand by Rex Ryan. I think a lot of people do because he's the vocal leader, and he's, we're going to build a bully, and then he signs Richie Incognito, and he says playoffs are bust, and he's not held accountable. I just can't go back on my initial synopsis of NFL head coaches getting 3 years. And I think every coach deserves the luxury of getting 3 years. Do you disagree at all?
No, I tend to agree with you. I think the problem that Rex runs into is he may be the most boastful coach in the league. So when he gets a job, it's not about we're going to turn this around and we're going to build a team. It's we're going to the playoffs, we're winning a Super Bowl, and he talks about it like it's happening next week. So I think because of that, he pushes the bar so high, so fast in people's minds that when it starts to go south, all of a sudden people think, wow, he's been there a long time. It's got to be 5-6 years. Why is he doing so poorly? Now, I think part of it's coaching, but let's be realistic. Tyrod Taylor is a guy that was a backup in Baltimore for 4 years, never really did much of anything. And is he a bad quarterback? I don't know if he's bad, but he's not what you ideally want as a starter. And E.J. Manuel has been a complete flop, and that's their front office's mistake. So he's sort of playing with a loaded deck of, I don't have a quarterback. The weapons I have at receiver, we've got injuries. We haven't had guys develop. I tend to think give Rex another year. But I will say this. If Rex gets blown out, you can't fire him and keep the front office. You got to fire the GM because a lot of the mistakes or the problems that Rex are having are due to lack of talent around him. So you can't blame Rex and keep the GM and let him get another coach.
Very fair, but here's now my devil's advocate point. We saw last year, and granted it's a totally different personnel package-wise, but last year the Denver Broncos overcame horrible quarterback play. A good defensive coach would overcome bad quarterback play, and if you look at the numbers, Tyrod Taylor is a better quarterback than Peyton Manning was last year. Granted, they don't have the defense that Denver does. Rex Ryan should be able to mask those deficiencies. He could have got in the playoffs last year, and it seems like they're so far away from the playoffs this year. Now, granted, Sammy Watkins has been injured, as you mentioned. LaShawn McCoy has been injured. This defense has been bad. So shouldn't he be held accountable for what is his calling card?
Oh, I trust me, I'm right there with you. I mean, like I said, I don't think Tyrod Taylor's a flop. I just don't think he's been good enough to be able to carry a team on his back. And yeah, defensively, I mean, it's not like, even without Mario Williams, it's not like they don't have talented players. They have some good football players on that defense, and they flash greatness. But you don't see it consistently from that team. And to me, that's the frustrating part. And that's why I can understand the owner saying, you know what? We went with Rex. We love his bravado, but this has been a bomb. And to me, if it were me, I'd probably get rid of Rex. I'd get rid of the front office, and I'd reach out and call Bill Polian, who was there in Buffalo when they went to the 4 Super Bowls. He was there in Carolina taking them. He took the Colts to the Super Bowl and won it with Peyton. Now, he may not be perfect, but he's going to get that place organized. He's going to get them doing the right thing, and he's going to give hope to a franchise by bringing back some of that sort of mantra, the belief system of when they were winning and going to the Super Bowl all those years. I think that's what I would do. And Bill was willing to talk 2 years ago. I'm sure he'd be very willing to jump back in the fray now.
If Rex wasn't as vocal of a coach, and I agree with you that if they had Bill Polian, they would be in a better spot, and he would reassess everything. He is an absolute mastermind. As you said, is he the best of the best of the best? No, but he's
awfully good.
Right behind the best of the best of the best. So I agree with that analysis and assessment of where Buffalo is and where they can be. There also just needs to be accountability, and I feel like I'm not trying to flip sides. I'm just saying from an objective perspective, when Buffalo is grabbing headlines by making, as you mentioned previously, these boastful remarks and these confident remarks, well, if you don't, and maybe this is very similarly to the presidency that we have now or presidency that we've had in years past, when you make promises and you don't keep them and you don't fulfill on those promises and help the people that are supporting you through thick and thin, then you're viewed as a failure and you need to be held accountable.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, I look at it and think, you can't as a coach come out and say we're that good, and then when you lose, be like, well, we're not really that good. I'm just saying that. It's like, well, then don't come out and say it, ding dong. Be honest about your team. Say you're rebuilding. You don't see the Browns coming out and proclaiming how great they are. You hear them talk about a process, and that's what the Cubs did for 3 years, and people were ready to string up Theo Epstein, but he stuck with his guns, believed in it, and the process turned into a great team. That, to me, is where I think the Bills are frustrated. I think they see Miami all of a sudden this year. They're winning games. They're like, wait a second. 2 years ago, Miami was done. Everyone thought they were a laughingstock. They've got a coach who's building confidence, and they're winning games. So I just think Rex is in a bad spot, and I think he's going to lose his job. I hate to say it, he's a good man, but that's what I think is going to happen.
Maybe his demeanor has run its course as well. Maybe he needs to sit back for a year to 2 years, 3 tops, and he'll get another head coaching opportunity. He's capable of being a head coach. I just think he needs to take a back seat and maybe find a way. And again, I want him to stay, but if he is fired, it wouldn't be the worst thing for him. Because what do you do when you lose? It shows what kind of coach you are. It shows what kind of player you are. It shows what kind of man or woman you are. And you go back to the drawing board, you reassess, and then you get back at it in a different way than what you did previously, which can be a very, very good thing. Maybe it's a smooth transition to Jeff Fisher, but since 2012, Gus Bradley has the most losses with 47. At 45, tied for second, are Rex Ryan and Jeff Fisher.
There you go.
Overall thoughts on Jeff Fisher being fired?
You know, I'm surprised a little bit because I believe, and I really believe this in my heart of hearts, that if the media in the past month had not jumped on the fact that Fisher hadn't had a winning season in almost a decade, was ready to set the record for most losses, if there was no media backlash saying Fisher's a bad coach or doesn't deserve it, I think he'd still be the coach. I think they are very cognizant of the media portrayal of Fisher because they're new to L.A., because they have to start selling personal seat licenses, getting that new stadium up for grabs. If there was no media outcry about Fisher, I think they would have let him stay in place at least for another year, because then they could have gone after a big-name coach right when that new stadium is ready to be opened in 2019. I think they would have stuck with Fisher for 2 more years if the media wasn't out there ripping him. But the fact that the media pointed out that this guy has 6 winning seasons and 21 as a head coach, I think eventually it just got too much, and the owner said, we got to do something because we're going to get killed, especially if the Chargers move up the freeway to L.A. and they hire a big-name coach and we're stuck with Jeff Fisher. I think they realized that they need to do something to be prepared to deal with the Chargers coming to L.A.
Here's where I disagree with you, is that you can't really blame, I'm not saying you, but like other people can't blame the media for calling it what it is.
I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying because it was out there, if they hadn't brought it out, I think they were content with losing. I don't think they cared about losing as long as he wasn't portrayed as a losing coach. They were okay to keep losing. But once people pointed out how bad he was, then I think. I agree. It's not the media's fault. The guy's a bad coach. 6 winning seasons in 20.
It's a historical stat.
Yes, exactly. It's crazy. No, I would never blame the media for that one.
Okay. So there's a few things to this, and we've talked about this previously. Mediocrity is one of the worst things that you can be when you are a big sports franchise, and also when you're trying to make a splash in a new market, bringing football back to Los Angeles. There were so many open seats for that Rams-Falcons game that it was preposterous to think that they wouldn't at least have had more seats in St. Louis, and I say that confidently.
Yes.
Second, with Jeff Fisher, he's run his course. You cannot continue, and I cannot believe I saw this quote from the chief operating officer of the LA Rams. If they were to go 6-10, then it would be a different story. So they were accepting him just being bad, not really, really bad. But as I stated, I think it was last week, there have been so many bad feuds that he has had, starting with Eric Dickerson. When you shun one of the best to ever wear your colors in your jersey and represent your team to the best of his abilities, where he literally made historical milestones representing your team's colors and your team's franchise, you do not shun him for calling out and calling a spade and saying your team is bad. We all knew their team was bad. There was a report via Pro Football Talk on Mike Florio, and again, I talked about this last week with all of us, is that they accepted, Jeff Fisher did, a trade with the league's front office, it's reported, to draft Michael Sam to stay off Hard Knocks. So it was all a sham to even draft Michael Sam, and I feel terrible for him. And third, just being bad every single year. The last time we ever accepted him being good was when the Titans and Kevin Dyson were a yard short in the Super Bowl. That was eons ago. Many teams don't even have that luxury of keeping a head coach. So Jeff Fisher should be very, very happy for what he's accomplished. He's still being paid
for 2 more years.
Standpoint in the league's front office, so he's going to be fine. But it was the right move, and they need to hire someone that understands the LA market.
There's no question. I think if the Rams were still in St. Louis, Fisher might still have a job because it wouldn't be as big a deal. But you're going to LA. The league, I'm sure, is putting a lot of pressure on. You have to start winning. You can't be a 4-12 team for the next decade because then you're going to have a 30,000 seats or 30,000 of attendance. So there's pressure. I really hope they keep the front office because when I look at that team, I do see talent. I mean, I see some playmakers. I believe Goff eventually will be a good quarterback. But look at the guys who are coaching Goff. They don't have, it's not like the Eagles where you have one quarterback and another quarterback and another quarterback all coaching the quarterback to help him develop. They had a bunch of guys that aren't quarterback guys. They need to get somebody in there to help Goff develop. They need to leave Les Snead, the GM, in place and let him keep bringing in talent because he's found guys like Ogletree who have become studs. Janoris Jenkins, even though he left as a free agent. They've done a great job, in my opinion, of bringing in talent. Now, let's go get a coach that can take advantage of it.
So there's a few head coaching candidates that come to mind, and one is a guy who I think is the dark horse, very, very dark horse for this job. He is, and we're going to talk about him later, he is helping groom a quarterback that I thought was always going to be an interception machine in Matthew Stafford. The offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions who could help groom Jared Goff is Jim Bob Cooter. Again, for a quarterback that I totally wrote off when it came to being anywhere near a competent NFL quarterback in Matthew Stafford. So I really like that pick. I think another one is Josh McDaniels, and then the obvious from an offensive perspective, I suppose, is Kyle Shanahan. But would any of those even really be a huge splash hire?
Well, I think McDaniels would. I do. Because despite what happened in Denver, he's coming from the Patriots. They've won like 47 Super Bowls, 16 consecutive years of 10 wins.
Sure.
I mean, and I think they'd have a chance because Josh is not going to go to a bad situation. But the situation he gets there is a young quarterback, and obviously a lot would depend on what he thought of Goff coming out. But if he liked Goff, it's a young quarterback, and although he's never worked with Les Snead was at the Falcons under Thomas Dimitroff. Dimitroff and McDaniels worked together at the Patriots. They have a relationship, and I'm sure he would trust Thomas if Thomas said, Les is the type of guy you can work with. You're going to be a great functioning unit together. And the owner hey, he gave Jeff Fisher 5 years. I'll bet you he'd be willing to sign McDaniels to a 7 or an 8-year deal. And if he did that, then McDaniels has to consider it. I like him. I love your idea of Jim Bob Cooter. I mean, you talk about a guy who's done wonders. I agree with you. I assumed Stafford was going to be Jay Cutler forever, throwing 12 to 15 interceptions in key games every year. But he's done a remarkable job of teaching a guy who 4 years ago said, I don't need to be coached. If you remember, that was what Stafford said. He said, I don't need it. Well, clearly you did, because look how good you are now with Caldwell and Cooter. So, yeah, he's a guy, but here's the question. He gets in the interview process, but he's not sure he's getting the job, and the Lions say, hey, pull your name out. We'll give you a check for $3 million a year for the next 5 years to stay here as the offensive coordinator. That'd be a hard one to turn down because you got job security. You go to L.A., who knows what that mess is going to turn into?
Great point. I don't know Jim Bob Cooter personally.
I love the name, though.
He doesn't know I exist. I absolutely love his name. He has no idea who the hell I am. All I will say is, if he turns Jared Goff into a winner, better yet, if he turns Jared Goff, if he's hired, let's say hypothetically, this entire fallacy-like story that I'm telling, if he gets hired, he turns Jared Goff into a 25-touchdown, 17-interception quarterback next year, win. And then he improves steadily year after year, going up to maybe 28 and 12, and then 30 and 10. Win. Humongous win. And that will give him job security because great things come in pairs, right? So you have Belichick and Brady. If you were to have a guy like Jim Bob Cooter who stays with Jared Goff for the long haul, all you got to do is take care of the defense and hire a defensive coordinator. Oh, and by the way, if Rex Ryan is fired, then you can bring Rex Ryan in.
And they already have talent on defense. It's not like they don't have anybody. I mean, Robert Quinn's not a bad football player. Aaron Donald might be the best defensive tackle in football. So they're pretty good there in terms of young talent. You combine that with teach this quarterback to play and get rid of your left tackle, get a new left tackle because Greg Robinson is clearly not that guy. You got a chance there. I love that pick of Cooter. I think he'd be a great guy. I will say, I do think because of name recognition, I believe the Rams will make at least an inquiry, and they'll publicly make it known that they would like to talk to Nick Saban. I don't think Saban will even consider it, but they will fly there. I would bet they will fly there before they announce they want to speak to him so that they can get all the PR. Because they want it to look like they're doing everything they can to get the biggest name in all of football.
Sure. Is there one college coach that you see right now, like the obvious name in the LA Times is Jim Harbaugh? We agree there's 0.0% chance. From a PR perspective, I agree with you. That's the right thing to do. Is there one college coach that you foresee making the jump? Maybe not to, I mean, we're talking about LA. I would love for it to be LA, but can you think of one coach that could maybe take over the reins in LA and be successful?
Well, you know, there's a coach I think could, but considering I think he's going to probably retire in the next 2 or 3 years and would never even consider going out there, it's Michigan State's D'Antonio. I think if you put him in charge of LA with Gurley and that defense, I think you would see them start to win. Mark is a great coach. He is a fundamentally sound coach, and he's a guy who is going to bring the type of physical football that I think would allow them to win, and I think would also get those fans really excited and back into it. I don't think there's any way he leaves Michigan State, because I've heard he's already decided he's not going to coach that much longer.
But if you're LA, and granted, I love what he has done with Michigan State, but if you're the LA Rams, that's not the splash hire.
No, not at all. Oh, it's not the splash. No.
And I even think that he knows that with Jim Harbaugh back in the state, that he's going to be losing a lot more football games and a lot more recruits. I thought that it wasn't inevitable, but when everything came about with Trent Baalke and Jim Harbaugh, you just had this feeling that he was going to go back, and I thought it was the perfect time for Mark to bolt and to go somewhere else. But if you're the Rams, you don't make that hire. You go with Kyle Shanahan, you go with Josh McDaniels. I still think my Jim Bob Cooter pick.
I love Jim Bob Cooter.
On the money. I just don't think that they're going to hire him because he's not the big name coach. Like, look, you lived in LA, I lived in LA. The first thing is you got to win, or else no one gives.
No one shows up.
No one's going to go to the games. They're going to go to the beach. They're going to go to the mall. It's 75 degrees and sunny. There's so many other things to do. So if you don't win, they're not going to come. So you need a winning pedigree of a head coach. Are those guys winners? McDaniels is because he's under Bill.
Because he's affiliated with Bill.
So those that have gone out and branched off really weren't successful. A lot of the Bill Belichick disciples. Kyle Shanahan is a young offensive mastermind. I haven't seen him be a head coach yet. Obviously, I think he's more than capable.
Oh yeah.
Hey man, you need a celebrity like hire for a celebrity.
No question.
And I don't think there's one out there right now.
No question. No, and that, here's the debate, and I don't know if they'd be willing to go down the road just because of age. And I'm looking that up as we speak.
Sure.
Because I don't think they will. But if they did.
Are you thinking of Tom Coughlin?
No, I'm thinking even older. But there's no way he'd come back and coach.
Oh, so he's retired.
The only one who's ever led the Rams to a Super Bowl. And won.
Mike Martz?
No, and won. Dick Vermeil. And he was a UCLA coach.
No.
But here's the question.
No,
I know. But that, to me, that's what they need. They need someone with that type of gravitas, who is a legend in the business and who has roots in Los Angeles. And that's going to be hard. They're going to have a hard time finding. No, but I'm not saying they're going to get him, but that's what they want. Somebody whose reputation and the LA combine. And I just don't know if there's anybody out there. I think whoever they bring in, unless they win and win quickly, they're going to be so disappointed out there because they're not going to be able to bring in Jim Harbaugh. He's not coming. At least I don't think he is.
I don't think he is either.
All right,
Dick Vermeil's a good pick. Lastly, you got to relate to the younger generation that's seeing football, professional football, for the first time. If you bring in this really old school coach, right, like Dick Vermeil, who's been out of the business for a while, this sounds so political, but like, is he relatable to the younger audience? If he wins, who gives a shit?
Exactly.
He's not going to be winning right away. So it's an interesting pick.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's the guy, but you need someone like that who's got LA and winning, like Pat Riley or Phil Jackson, somebody who there's some relation to the city.
Right.
All right, so we go from there. We go to the AFC South. We have 3 teams. We have the Colts, who everybody thought they were going to win 12, 13 games, win the division. That was the mantra. Last year was a down year, and Andrew was a truly great quarterback who just stumbled last year, and they'll run away with it. And Houston, well, we don't know. And Tennessee, they're years away. Well, now as we close in on the final few weeks of the season, to me, it clearly looks like Houston and Tennessee are better teams than Indianapolis. Now, I don't know how it's going to play out in the playoffs, if any of them are going to win any games. But I got to tell you, to me, right now, the Colts are clearly the 3rd team in that division, and I don't see any way they make the playoffs.
No, I don't see it either. Losing to Houston at home, the first time being swept by Houston ever in their franchise's history, this was historic in terms of playing poor football in what we viewed as a poor division. But I think they've shown us a little something.
No question.
This season. We crushed this division last year. We crushed them in the years prior. It's good to see that it's competitive, to say the least, and it's competitive in a more winning way, because in the past few seasons it seemed like a team was going to go 6-10 and make the playoffs. Tennessee winning 3 of 4, they're red hot, but I think I agree with you that Houston is going to go to the playoffs. As I look at their schedule real quick, Tennessee, again, winning 3 of 4. They have Kansas City, Jacksonville, and Houston. Not terribly hard, but playing Kansas City, who's pissed off, I would not want to face them right now in Week 14. Houston has Jacksonville, Cincinnati, Tennessee. It cannot be more easy. You win out, and Tennessee loses probably to Kansas City, and then to you, the division is yours. So I like Houston. The MVP of this entire division, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but is actually a Bill Belichick disciple. It's Romeo Crennel. They have a lot of good pieces, but you lose a defensive MVP, and you lose, in the past few years, what many viewed as the offensive MVP in J.J. Watt with the touchdown passes that he caught, a do-it-all player, a juggernaut player defensively on that line, maybe one of the most talented players that I'm sure you've ever seen and I've ever seen. You lose him, and you get Jadeveon Clowney to buy in, it seems, more than he
No
has
question.
before, Romeo Crennel is the MVP of this entire division.
I'll tell you what, Romeo Crennel, and people got to give credit to Bill O'Brien and George Godsey, their offensive coordinator. They've not been great, but they found a way to win with a quarterback that, to me, has clearly shown, at least now, he's not a good starter. Now, maybe a year or two down the road, he'll get better each year, but right now, you have to look at him as a below-average quarterback, yet they've manipulated him enough to be able to beat teams in close games. And that's impressive. Bill O'Brien has done a great job. I do think the Osweiler thing will bite them in the ass a year or two down the road, because I think they would like to maybe replace him, but they're sort of stuck.
It can't be 2 years because the deal is front-loaded with money.
It could
So
be,
he's
yeah.
got this next year, which is guaranteed,
Yeah.
and the next two are not guaranteed. So it's basically a
Two,
earn it
yeah.
person.
Yeah, so, I mean, if he struggles next year, I could see them benching him. But for now, got to give them credit and got to give Tennessee credit. They have really shown, hey, we're buying into old school football. We're going to rely on DeMarco Murray and Henry from Alabama, the rookie, Derrick Henry, and we're going to run the ball a lot. Mariota's going to progress, and he has progressed throughout the season, and they're going to play physical football, both sides of the ball. This is a team I think you're going to see 3 years from now winning 12, 13 games on a regular basis, because they're not going to be
12, 13.
I really think they're going to be a dominant team, because you're going to have an elite quarterback. And I don't mean elite in terms of record setting, but in terms of never making a mistake. He doesn't throw balls into bad situations. I think you're going to have an elite young running back in Derrick Henry in 2 to 3 years, because DeMarco will probably ride off into the sunset. And then I look at that defense. They have some good young players on that defense. Now, and I don't mean young like 22, but 24, 25. I think they're the team that 3 years from now, they will be the kings of that division.
I'm amazed to hear you say 12 to 13 for a Titans team, a Tennessee Titans team.
Trust me, it blows my mind too. But John Robinson deserves a lot of credit for the job he's done as GM, and he also deserves credit for saying, you know what, I may want to bring in my own guy, but this Malarkey guy, we get along. I think this guy's got a chance to be a good head coach, and he showed patience to say, let's give him a chance.
Can you think of a GM who made 2 better picks solely in that division in this past draft class, with Tajay Sharp at wide receiver and Jack Conklin at right tackle? I can't think of one.
Well, you know, I will say, given I'm biased, but I think San Diego, when you get what I think will be the best defensive player in football the next 5 or 10 years in Joey Bosa.
Oh, no, I'm saying in the division.
Oh, in the division. Oh, no, nobody even close. Oh,
yeah.
No, it's...
I agree with you with Joey Bosa. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, in that division, no, nobody even close. Right. I mean, and everybody thought Jacksonville hit it out of the park, getting Jalen Ramsey and Miles Jack. And Miles Jack's been healthy, been playing, and he has not been dominant. I'm surprised. I thought he'd be a great impact player. Not made a great impact. And Ramsey has been
good.
He's been good. No question. Yeah. But he hasn't been as good as Conklin or Derrick Henry or Tajay Sharp. I mean, give them credit. They found guys that not only are good, but they fit the role they're needed to fill. You have Conklin and Taylor Lewan, who are different in terms of athletically, but they're same in terms of nasty, prick-type players who get after guys and will punch, will kick. That's what they're going to be built on, is nastiness, physical play, and that's why I think they're going to win a lot of games over the next decade.
I'm amazed at the development of Jack Conklin, who was really, really good coming out of Michigan State, and he played center at Michigan State. So he's moved.
Well, played both. Played both.
He played both. From what I remember, he was drafted, listed as a center. So he moves to right tackle, and he allows 1 sack this season.
Yeah, but remember, he started at center at Michigan State. By the end of his career, he was left tackle. And his workout at the pro day was ridiculous. He was so fundamentally sound and so nasty, even in a pro day environment where you don't have to beat anybody up or anything. You could tell this son of a gun was not going to be denied. And on film, is he a great player? I don't know if he's a great player, but he's a really solid 10-year starter. And I will tell you, there were teams in the top 2 or 3, because everybody was talking about Laramie Tunsil, and there was one other guy who was, of course, named, I slip in my mind right now, as the top 2 tackles in the draft. And there were 2 or 3 teams that told me if they had chosen an offensive tackle in the top 5, it would have been Conklin. Because even though they felt those guys were better, they felt this guy's personality was going to allow him to last and be a more stable guy in the NFL.
So with Baltimore losing,
Ronnie Stanley.
Sure, Ronnie Stanley. Sure. Going to Baltimore. Speaking of, with Baltimore losing to New England, with Miami losing Ryan Tannehill, which appeared at first to be for the season, and now they're a little bit more optimistic. I'm personally not. It's still a really, really bad sprain.
Yeah, a strained ligament is a torn ligament. It's just not completely torn. I mean, come on now. What they're doing is basically saying, tape it up, get the frig out there because we want to get to the playoffs, and if it blows out, you'll rehab for next year.
Right, but then you're RG3 2.0, where you're putting a guy out there in the playoffs and you're risking his future health when he's really shown you a lot this season under Adam Gase.
And it's Gase's first year. He's not getting fired. Why not shut him down? To me,
I agree.
It doesn't make sense. Why force him out there?
So, with all that being said, you don't foresee any way that Tennessee gets it. With Baltimore losing, with Miami losing Ryan Tannehill for what I believe to be is the season.
Is it possible? Yes, but you have Miami, you have Baltimore, and you also have Denver. So they're going to have to now. Given they're going to have to jump all those teams, but it's possible. Yes, it's just hard because they play KC. So imagine if they beat KC, that means the last game of the year is going to come down to them in Houston. So they're going to have to beat 2 playoff teams probably to get that spot. I just don't know if they can do it. I like Mariota, but like I said, he to me is a developing guy who avoids mistakes. At this point in his career, I don't know if he's a guy who can make those plays to win games. He avoids mistakes very well. So I think this year they'll just miss out. I think next year they win that division, and I don't think it's close.
That would be really, really good for the Tennessee Titans.
Yes.
And the people that have stuck by that team, because I remember, and I'm sure you do, where there were so many empty seats in the upper deck. And people just didn't give a damn about going and seeing that team. Man, that would be so, so healthy for that part.
Oh, it would be great. All right, so we go from there. Mariota developing quarterback. And we say, okay, what in the world are people thinking, screaming that Dak Prescott should be benched after he struggles? And people can say what they want. Steve Spagnuolo may have been an utter and complete failure as a head coach of the Rams. But when he's been the defensive coordinator of the Giants, they've done a lot of great things. Beating the Patriots in the Super Bowl. This guy can coach defense. And clearly, and if you watch the next 3 games, I'm sure we're going to see it, he did some things where they lined up in the same alignment and ran different coverages every time. You can bet every game the next 3 weeks, teams are going to line up in that same thing, and they're going to do all different things and see if Dak can process it. It is not easy for a rookie to handle a complex defense like Steve is putting out there. Don't blame Dak. Blame just the fact he's a rookie. He hasn't seen this. You can't get mad at him. He's going to struggle when that happens. Hey, Giants, I don't think they're a great team, but they're a well-coached, fundamentally sound team that doesn't beat themselves on defense.
Obviously, we know that Tony Romo is the backup to the Dallas Cowboys, the backup for the Dallas Cowboys, where he is the career leader.
In everything.
Better than Roger Staubach, better than Troy Aikman in many statistical categories, including passing yards and touchdowns. So when you have someone that is your backup who has those accolades from a franchise perspective, there's going to be cries. The problem is there just shouldn't be. This rookie had won 11 straight games.
Exactly.
He's fine if he loses a game.
Or 2.
Or 2 when you have already put them way behind and they are so far in your rear view that maybe you just don't even see them. I'm fine with Dak Prescott struggling. You need to know how to lose and struggle in order to know how to succeed and win. And that is what he's going through right now. So with the only other loss that they took aside from a win-loss was his MVP candidacy. There should be 0 whatsoever of these cries for Tony Romo to be in there. Oh, save Dak. He's having a horrible game. He threw 2 interceptions. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
He has led your team to a successful season and success that I can't remember the last time Dallas has ever tasted.
They're the number 1 seed. They're the number 1 seed.
So everyone needs to calm down with all the pieces that they have. You're allowed to have 1 bad game, maybe even 2 more bad games. Get them out of your way when you head into the playoffs.
Yep. I agree wholeheartedly. So we'll jump from that with Dak Prescott to Big Ben, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not a subject we have to spend a ton of time on, but when I look at it, everybody's screaming Deflategate 2. It's going to be a big controversy. And I'll put it two ways. Two reasons it won't be. A, it's not the playoffs. So no one really cares. And B, the Steelers are one of, just like the New York Giants, one of the founding father franchises in this league. The Rooneys are more respected than probably any family in the NFL other than maybe the Maras. Nobody's close. So if they tell the commissioner nothing went on, that's it. It's over. There's not going to be a debate. They've never been caught cheating before. There haven't been whispers throughout the league of this happening over and over and over. That's why this story will go away, despite many in Boston wanting this to become the second Deflategate to see the Steelers punished.
Before Deflategate happened last year, 2 years ago, hard to believe, would you say that the New England Patriots were one of the most respected franchises? Were they in that group?
No.
You would not.
Because up until they started winning, they had been a laughingstock for many years, and Kraft was not regarded as a great owner to work for. Not that he was a bad guy. He didn't have a great or a negative. He was just sort of there. And really, he didn't do. I mean, think about the sacrifices the Rooneys and the Maras made over the years to try to help other franchises. Not that Kraft has done anything wrong. He's been a great owner and a great sort of spokesman for the league, but he hasn't been there 50 years. And that, to me, is where those franchises get a little bit of extra cushion when things like this happen. Because when they call the Rooneys and they say, no, nothing was going on, and don't forget the 78 million things we've done to help this league, we're not trying to screw the league. They're going to say, good point, and have a good day, and we'll apologize for even thinking this.
Right. You bring up very fair points, and I'm glad I asked that. Because obviously, as you stated, the Rooneys have done so much. My problem with all of this is that it was a 32-word statement, which, again, I understand it's not the playoffs, but it goes to show maybe how little evidence there was. But Ben McAdoo complained about it. The NFL acknowledged it and then disposed of it very quickly. And it seems like they want to expunge it from all NFL records that this ever came up. My problem is you took 5 days with the New England Patriots, and in this case, you took 55 minutes to solve this entire thing. It doesn't take that quick a time. I think what mainly, and this is just my own opinion, what I believe occurred was, and he's not just going to make false claims, because if you make false claims, it's not only on you, which is Ben McAdoo, but it's also on, as you said, an ownership of the New York Giants that is so heavily respected, where you would get disrespected in the football communities and at the owners' meetings. And the other owners go,
yeah,
what the fuck is going on with your coach? So, obviously, you don't want to take that PR hit. But I also think that Deflategate Part 2, the NFL was like, nope, nothing here, we're done. Because they took such a hit from everything that occurred with the New England Patriots and Tom Brady that they didn't want to see it happen once again. So even if this did happen, my own opinion, even if this did happen, with the Steelers underinflated balls, if they underinflated balls, the NFL was going to come out in front of it, say nothing happened with this Jay Glazer report, who is rarely ever wrong. He's like the Ariel Helwani.
That's
of
for
the
sure.
NFL. He never gets anything wrong. From what I truly believe is a very good reporter and an honest fact checker. So I believe it happened, and I believe the NFL did not want to take a second humongous hit. So they exposed of this very, very, very quickly. And they know how tired we are of Deflategate. They know how tired we are of talking about, PSIs and underinflated footballs. No one wants to hear about this anymore.
I couldn't agree more. I think they wanted this to go away. I think they don't want to get into the whole media thing again, and I think that's why they solved it so quickly. And I think if they had actually called the Steelers and said, we want this to go away, we're going to make a quick statement, will you come out and say, yep, we must have screwed up the balls, the Steelers would have come out and said that. Whereas I think if they had done that to New England when this happened, New England would not have come out and said that. And I think for that reason, they know this is going to die quickly. So the last thing we're going to hit on in the NFL before we take a quick break and then jump into college football, is Matt Ryan a legit MVP candidate? Why isn't he getting the credit? And I got to tell you, I think there's a lot of guys out there that deserve to be in the discussion, but Matt's definitely got to be in there. When you talk about a team that fell apart last year after that 6-1 start. It looked like things were heading that way this year. They started to struggle, but what happens? Matt gets them righted. Matt rallies them in a few games, especially after that San Diego debacle where they lost. They could have fallen apart after that game. But what do? They step back, they come back, and they've had a few games where it's been tight. But Matt's sort of pulled the team together, made a few big drives late in games. I think he's done a great job. I'm not saying he's the leader in the house, but he needs to be in that discussion.
I get rid of the LA game very quickly because LA is.
It's embarrassing. Yeah.
They have a very good and underachieving defense, but when Matt Ryan puts up the numbers he does, which is 3 touchdown passes in less than 4 quarters, and you don't have Julio Jones, and you don't have Mohamed Sanu, yeah, fair play to you. You played well. You also played against a team that doesn't really have any leadership whatsoever.
Exactly.
All over the field. So I take that away slightly, let's say. He is having a career year, with 30 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and a career-high passer rating of 113.2. I think that awards some merit and some discussion. What lingers for a lot of the voters right now is that in a do-or-die game against the Kansas City Chiefs, where you could absolutely put yourself on the mantle of MVP, he had a pick-6 and a pick-2 to the same guy. And the Eric Berry story continues, and it is great to see for the Atlanta Falcons. Obviously, they were not rooting for the Eric Berry story that day. The pick-2 lingers with a lot of voters, and that's why I believe, we talked about this previously, my 1 through 3 right now would be Tom Brady, because I love seeing someone rise up against the NFL and what he has. I'm not openly rooting for it. It's just cool to see that you can try to kick me down, but I'll get up and I'll have a career year in less games. Number 2 is Matthew Stafford for what he's done and how the Detroit Lions, Russ, rank, I believe, 28th in running the football. So the running game is non-existent. You have a wide receiver, Marvin Jones, who's a clear-cut number 1, but no teams are fearing Marvin Jones, and he has had injuries. You have Golden Tate as your number 2. You have Eric Ebron, who's wildly inconsistent. And you have an offensive line that has 2 rookies. So what Matthew Stafford has done, I think,
unbelievable.
He himself as the number 2 and Matt Ryan number 3.
See, to me, it's Stafford 1, and I actually think it's by a large margin. And the reason I say that is, without him and his ability to really carry that team in key spots every game this year almost, they'd probably be a 4-win team. I'm blown away by his composure, his ability to avoid mistakes this year. This is something you never saw from Stafford, and you can see the difference in the team. Previous years, they win 5, 6, 7 games. This year, he's playing better. All of a sudden, they're winning a ton of games. They're not a great team. They're a well-coached team with a great quarterback. I think Brady is what he is. I mean, he's one of the 3 greatest that ever played. He's unbelievable. But I also think that's a really, really good team. I mean, when you have the luxury of saying, yeah, we're going to take James White out because Deion Lewis is back healthy now, and we still have LeGarrette Blount, and we've got a very good young offensive line with Shaq Mason at 1 guard, Joe Thune at the other. So we have 2 elite young guards who can pull, they can trap, they can do all the stuff we want. And defensively, they have about 6 million solid guys at linebacker, whether it's Hightower or Ninkovich. They have solid guys who are good. They may not be great, but I just look at it and, yeah, Brady's great. But to me, Stafford, the difference in what he's brought to that team winning clutch games, I don't know if there's anybody in the league that could have done what he did.
But here's the thing. You're talking about the New England running backs, who, by the way, Jeff Fisher doesn't know.
Yes.
You're talking about the New England running backs. Like, they are literally Eric Dickerson.
No. We're not going that far.
Like, it's James White and Deion Lewis. Deion Lewis is a good player. I still think, he could be a Jonas Gray, where he succeeds with one team.
Could be. Yep.
And then he goes to another team and falters. It's too early to tell. LeGarrette Blount has been good, but he's also at times been inconsistent, a la with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and a few others.
Yep.
So they win with Tom Brady, an offensive line that he controls in many ways too, calling out the mics and what have you. And he succeeds by not having Rob Gronkowski this year.
Agreed.
I think we need to remember, Martellus Bennett is a very good tight end. Rob Gronkowski is arguably the best that we have ever seen if you prorate what he has done in his years in the NFL. So you lose your number 1 pass catcher. You don't really have a great number 2. Edelman is good, but again, it's the same sort of feeling of if he goes to another team, would he succeed? Potentially.
Well, but here's my
No, we'll
question.
never see it.
They're 3-1 with Garoppolo, or with Garoppolo and Brissett.
Garoppolo and Brissett,
So
yeah.
is the real MVP Josh McDaniels and not Tom Brady for the way he's put all these pieces in place that are not great players and found a way? And that to me is why Stafford is above, because there's nobody playing and doing. Nobody, I don't think, could step in there and have done what he's done this year.
My thing with Josh McDaniels, and granted it was Tim Tebow and Kyle Orton, we've seen what he has done with quarterbacks not named Tom Brady.
Agreed.
Now, is that fair? Is that fair? No, but that's just my opinion.
I agree with it.
You know, it's so far different than if I were coaching, you know, the Olympic Dream Team. Those are the best of the best.
Yes.
Anybody can do it. You still have to control running backs who are average. I would say slightly above average. If you take LeGarrette Blount out, they're average.
Yep.
You have wide receivers who are average. Julian Edelman is the only one who is far above average. And you have a good core of tight ends, but you just lost the best that maybe ever was. So Josh McDaniels deserves some credit, but I still think it's Tom Brady who's running the show.
Well, I agree he is, but I just don't. To me, I look at it and say, geez, every year he's this good. So I don't know. I just look at it and think Stafford, I don't know. There's something about it. But so on that note, we're going to wrap our NFL conversation, take a 2-minute break, and then we'll be right back with college football.